Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our read-along of Frank Herbert's masterpiece, Dune. We are reading our way chapter by chapter. They're not actually designated as chapters, but that's what they are. The book is broken up into three segments, three long segments, and those segments are broken up into little installments, and that's what we're doing, installment by installment, until we get to the end. And we have been lately following the fortunes of young Paul Atreides, heir to the fallen house of Atreides, and his mother, the Lady Jessica, who is a member of the Bene Gesserit, supremely manipulative and capable, semi-secretive society of superwomen in this far future Imperium where the story takes place. The House Atreides has been brought down by House Harkonnen, their longtime enemies, led by Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. The Emperor orders House Atreides to take over the planet Dune from House Harkonnen, which Duke Leto knows immediately is a trap because the Harkonnens would never willingly leave, and the Emperor would never willingly give such power to a rival like the Duke. And the power comes not only from the spice melange, which lengthens life and enhances sensory abilities, makes space travel possible, and which is only found on Dune. It also maybe comes from the native inhabitants of Dune, the Fremen, who live in such harsh environments that it's theoretically possible that you could make them into an incredible fighting force. There is a rumor, we're going to hit this later on in a future chapter, there is a rumor that the Duke and his war masters intended to do exactly that. We've seen that rumor is true. We've been in their councils in the first part of this book. We know that they wanted to reach out to the Fremen and start to recruit, to train these incredibly hardy warriors in some form of military discipline under the banner of Atreides. None of that happens because it doesn't happen fast enough. So the attack happens. The Emperor sends legions of his Sardaukar along in disguise as Harkonnen soldiers, and they manage to destroy House Atreides and scatter the remnants everywhere. The Atreides fighting men are caught in caves. They are hunted down like animals. Some of them escape with Gurney Halleck, one of the Duke's war masters. Others are caught or killed with Thufir Hawat, the Duke's mentat, who is captured by the Harkonnens, and so on and so forth down the line. It's a whole fighting force that the Duke brought with him, and the more optimistic among them were probably hoping that they would serve and then retire back on Caladan or some other water world. They certainly wouldn't stay on Dune as hunted captives. But that didn't happen. And we don't know all of those stories. Of course, Frank Herbert barely sketches any of them. You could write an epic about just one Atreides man and what he had to do to survive on Dune and how long he survived. There are many such epics like that get hinted at in this whole sequence of books and never get told. But in the chapter that we're reading today, which begins, it begins with an excerpt from the Collected Sayings of Muad'Dib by Princess Irulan, of course, because every chapter seems to begin with a different book by this person, and with lots and lots of help from other people. Paul Muad'Dib himself writes books. She excerpts from a few of them. The preface to one book is written by Stilgar. What does Stilgar know of writing book prefaces? And Princess Irulan seems to have made a little cottage industry out of writing books about Paul Muad'Dib. The cryptic utterance at the beginning of this chapter is from the Collected Sayings of Muad'Dib, and it is, "The concept of progress acts as a protective mechanism to shield us from the terrors of the future." Which is dumb. But a lot of the aphorisms in this book are dumb. But the book starts itself with, the chapter starts itself with, on his 17th birthday, Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen killed his 100th slave gladiator in the family games. So we have changed scenes with this chapter. We are no longer on Dune. We are on Giedi Prime, the home world of the Harkonnens. And there is a festival going on. It is young Feyd-Rautha's birthday. Feyd-Rautha is the teenage nephew of the grotesquely overweight and theatrically evil Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is also theatrically homosexual. One of my deepest criticisms of this book, one of my only deep criticisms of this book, is that Frank Herbert is using the one to reinforce the other, when there's nothing evil about being homosexual. But it's a very vampish, old world 1950s type thing, and it just happens to be caught like a fly in amber in this book. Uh, Feyd-Rautha, his nephew, is not anything like the Baron. He's also not anything like his cousin, the Beast Raban, another nephew. He is slim and beautiful and dangerous and extremely intelligent. And he has a ritual where he goes into the arena and fights with slaves in gladiatorial combat. Uh, it's it's a crowd pleaser, but it is entirely fake. The slaves are drugged ahead of time, and they have inhibitor drugs in them to make them terrified or to make them sloppy. The Baron, the Baron's heir, Feyd-Rautha, is never in any serious danger in these combats. But we shift scenes to Giedi Prime, and before we get to combat in the arena, the combat in the arena that is foreshadowed in the first line of the chapter, we get a conversation between the Baron and a figure that he refers to a few times as the Emperor's lapdog, Count Casimir Fenring. Herbert insistently refers to him as a genetic eunuch. A weird fetishization. Not the last time that such things will happen in the Dune books, but Count Fenring has a Bene Gesserit wife, Margot. And although this is the first time that we're meeting them, it's not the first time that we've heard of either one of them. In one of those book excerpts at the beginning of a chapter, we read a long excerpt from a book, basically Princess Irulan reflecting on her time in the imperial court, in which she says that she thinks that in all of the world, in all of his extended court, her father, the emperor, had only one real friend, Count Fenring. So we've at least heard about that. And we've also heard of Margot Fenring, because a long time ago, in the early parts of this book, the Lady Jessica is inspecting a greenhouse that she has found inside the compound on Dune, a hidden greenhouse on a planet where water is more precious than anything. And she finds a secret message from a fellow member of the Bene Gesserit, from Margot Fenring, warning her of danger, warning her of a traitor in her midst. So we've had hints of both of these two, but now we meet them. She is tall and elegant and beautiful. He is small and rabbit-like, and it is clearly a feint. Anyone who can read body language, anyone who can recognize the stance or the reflexes of a fighting man, knows that Count Fenring is deadly, and that everything about him is pretense. All of it is misdirection. They also mumble and hum a lot as a kind of affected aristocratic eccentricity, but it's actually a secret language. They're communicating with each other the whole time. The Count wants word with Baron Harkonnen. They go into what is referred to here without a smile on his face as a cone of silence. Some of you will be old enough to remember a TV sitcom that made a good deal of humor out of that, but this is the literal thing. So they can't be eavesdropped upon. And they have a revealing conversation. Now, all is not well. The Emperor does not trust Baron Harkonnen, even though they were Confederates. He doesn't trust him. There's, in fact, a great exchange. I wonder if I can find it for you. Yes. The Baron reveals to Count Fenring that he actually has Feyd-Rautha, Duke Leto's old mentat, sort of a living computer, as a captive, and is treating him well. He's impregnated Hawat's body with a poison. So if Hawat isn't continually supplied with the antidote, he will die. But Hawat appears not to know this, and it doesn't matter anyway. He would suspect it because the Harkonnen court is a sink of corruption and treachery. So he's not expecting that he's going to live long. Fenring is astonished at this because Hawat is dangerous, and as Fenring puts it, knows all sorts of things that no man should know. So you should withdraw the antidote. You should kill this person. And Baron Harkonnen is not happy with that suggestion. Mentats are very valuable, and he's killed his own. His own mentat is dead. So he insists on keeping him alive when Count Fenring says, withdraw the antidote. Kill Hawat. He's too dangerous to be left alive. The Baron says that he'll obey that order if he sees it under the Emperor's signature, but he won't obey a whim from Count Fenring. And Fenring says, "You think it a whim? What else can it be? The Emperor has obligations to me, too, Fenring. I rid him of the troublesome Duke." With the help of a few Sardaukar, those are the Emperor's imperial soldiers that Fenring is reminding the Baron that he could not have succeeded against House Atreides without. With the help of a few Sardaukar, where else would the Emperor have found a house to provide the disguising uniforms to hide his hand in this matter? He has asked himself the same question, Baron, but with a slightly different emphasis. Which is a wonderful arch way of saying that the Emperor is realizing that he found a house who was willing to be completely deceitful, to go against all the accepted codes of imperial conduct in order to destroy the Atreides. And it's good to know that such a house exists, right? Because they're not trustworthy allies. The two banter a bit. And at one point, almost seeming to want to needle Count Fenring, the Baron mentions, well, perhaps I should take a page from the Emperor's own playbook in dealing with this Fremen scum on the planet Dune. Perhaps I should convert this hellhole of a planet into a prison world. And Fenring is arrested. He is very wry. He's very sarcastic until that moment, and then he stops and becomes very serious and says, "You will not do that without the Emperor's permission." The Baron doesn't think anything of it. Keep in mind, the Baron, as he tells Count Fenring, is completely certain that between the pogroms instituted against the Fremen by the Sardaukar during the initial takeover of Dune, and the hunts and punishments and persecutions that the Harkonnen themselves have endeavored, there can't be any more than a few hundred Fremen left on the planet. So he doesn't think it's a pressing concern. But the interview between these two is a bit of a surprise to a first-time reader of this book. They should be chummy. It looks like the Emperor and Harkonnens are hand in glove. And they're not. There's a lot of suspicion there. There's almost a veiled threat that Count Fenring might not get off Giedi Prime alive. He makes a threat as well to the Baron that if your part in this plot were revealed, in order to protect themselves, the Emperor and whatever great houses he can align behind him might come in here to Giedi Prime and carve the whole place out like a gourd. Do you want that? So it's knives bared between the two of them in this seemingly polite, unheard conversation. And then they break it up, and they go into the arena, and they watch Feyd-Rautha in combat. Everything in this city, everything in this arena, everything in the Harkonnen world is cruel and garish. Thufir Hawat is not in this scene, but his hand is felt definitely because Feyd-Rautha, we are introduced to Feyd-Rautha's thoughts. We get his own reflections when he's in the arena. And he is reflecting on a feint within a feint, on a plan that Hawat has proposed to him and he has accepted, which is to let a slave come into the arena to fight him who only appears drugged but is not actually drugged. Feyd-Rautha is 17, but he has been trained in savage fighting arts, much like Paul Atreides, and is certain that this won't be a trouble. Also, as an extra precaution, Hawat and his men have drummed into the subconscious of the particular slave who'll be coming into the arena a hypnotic suggestion word. If Feyd-Rautha were to say that word, the slave would go slack just for a minute. But in the lightning fast give and take of knife combat, that's a death sentence. So plus, of course, one of Feyd-Rautha's two blades is poisoned. And he is lying with the signifiers on the blades. He's lying about which one it is. He feels like he stacked the deck enough in his favor with this trick. So the slave is introduced into the arena. Once Feyd has made his big arrival and the crowd has cheered, the slave is introduced. And Feyd-Rautha sees immediately who the slave is. He is one of those Atreides fighting men. It's been a while now. It's been a long time since the fall of Arrakeen. Who knows what misadventures, who knows what torments this man has gone through. But he hates the Harkonnens. That's for sure. And he's been trained by the Atreides. So he's not just a bumbler. He could in a fair combat, if he had not ever been drugged or deprived, and if Feyd-Rautha had just met him at random, it's entirely possible that this gladiator could kill him in a knife fight. And Feyd-Rautha sees right away that that is true and wonders if maybe there's a feint within a feint within a feint. The idea that Hawat proposed to him was, it will become obvious to everyone that this slave is not actually drugged, and the suspicion will fall on the slave master, who the Baron will then order executed, and you can move your own man into his position. It solidifies your own political power to do this. But what if Hawat is actually not just an impersonal thinking machine and is still loyal to the Atreides? Well, then he could put a man in the arena who is primed to kill Feyd-Rautha and is not disabled in any way, and still the slave master is the only one who'll be blamed, because Hawat's own fingerprints on it seem to be invisible. Feyd realizes all this, but he rejects the offers of his handlers nearby to subdue the man. He's convinced that he can handle it, and they fight, and it is thrilling, absolutely thrilling. We have that fight scene between Paul and Jamis, the Fremen Jamis, and now we get another fight scene that is very much, I think, meant to parallel, to show us a weird, warped mirror version of Paul Atreides, another teenage boy who's been trained to lethal perfection. And Feyd wins. It's a very tense encounter. The man almost wins, but Feyd wins. And we are privy to, Herbert takes us inside the coded conversation between Count Fenring and his countess. And it turns out that they have not missed anything. Their trained eyes have not missed anything. They know perfectly well that it was all a ruse, and they also know that Feyd was surprised, that there was a surprise involved in the combat. They have a plan. Count Fenring is very much working along the same lines as the Bene Gesserit, and the Bene Gesserit have long-term plans for producing bloodlines that they approve of, that are leading saving the best of humanity and weeding out the worst. When the chapter begins, they're not really sure that anything in the Harkonnen line is worth saving. These people seem like savages, like animals. But the more they get a look at Feyd-Rautha, the more they think, yeah, something in him is probably worth preserving. They very touchingly, very, very tellingly point out, imagine what he would have been like if he'd had an Atreides upbringing, instead of being warped by a monster like the Baron. But their plan is for Margot Fenring to seduce Feyd-Rautha and leave Giedi Prime bearing his child. I don't know that anything more is ever made of that. But I might be misremembering a little detail for an appendix here or there. Feyd wins and seems to do the honorable thing, and so there will be a grand party, and that is where the scene ends. An Atreides man has died in the Harkonnen arena, a squalid death, but it raises a lot of questions. And this chapter is both Frank Herbert giving us a glimpse of what is happening outside of Dune, what the world is like in the larger Imperium that caused this novel to happen. And it turns out that that picture is grim. And also to show us Feyd-Rautha. And a little more prominently, another element of how things are going in House Harkonnen, the alleged victors at the beginning of this book. And that's going to continue. So we'll wrap up this chapter for now, and we will keep going with the next one. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.